The gentle hum of the Horizon's engines filled the command deck as Captain Alex Reed stared at the strange patterns dancing across his monitor. For the past 20 minutes, the ship's communication array had been picking up a signal, faint and distorted, but definitely artificial. "Can we clean it up any more, Tom?" Reed asked, running a hand through his short brown hair. Lieutenant Tom Fisher, the communications officer, tapped rapidly at his console. "Working on it, Captain. Whatever this is, it's coming from deep in the Orion sector. Based on the degradation pattern, I'd say it's been traveling for at least 3 days." The rest of the bridge crew watched in silence as Fisher worked. The Horizon was a small exploration vessel with a crew of just 15, tasked with mapping the edges of human-controlled space. They weren't equipped for much beyond basic scientific research and preliminary contact protocols. "Got it," Fisher announced suddenly. It's a distress call, sir." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a being unlike any the crew had encountered before. Its skin was pale blue, with delicate gill-like structures pulsing along an elongated neck. Large, dark eyes dominated a face that seemed both alien and oddly gentle. "This is Elder Tor of the Lethian Confederation." The creature spoke, its voice translated by the ship's computer into a soft, melodic English. "Our worlds are under attack by the Vorn Empire. We are not warriors. We have always been peaceful. We cannot survive this assault much longer." The message continued, showing brief flashes of cities under bombardment, strange silver ships unleashing destruction upon beautiful crystal structures. The being called Tor described their people, a species dedicated to art, philosophy, and the peaceful exploration of space, now facing extinction at the hands of conquerors they could not hope to resist. "We send this message to the stars, hoping someone will hear us," Tor concluded. "If there are others who value peace, who stand against tyranny, please help us. The Vorn will not stop with our worlds." The message ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Reed leaned back in his chair, mind racing. Exploration command regulations were clear. New species contact required extensive observation and approval from headquarters before any direct interaction. Interfering in an interspecies conflict was absolutely forbidden without direct orders from Earth Central. "How far are we from the origin point?" Reed asked finally. "About 3 days at maximum thrust," replied the pilot, a young woman named Kai. Fisher cleared his throat. "Sir, protocol dictates we report this to command and await instructions. This is well beyond our mission parameters." Reed nodded slowly. "I'm aware of protocol, Lieutenant." He stared at the frozen image of Elder Tor on the screen, at the fear and desperation in those alien eyes. "Send the transmission to command, but also set course for the signal's origin. We can always turn back if ordered." "Captain," Fisher began. "These people are dying, Tom," Reed interrupted. "By the time command debates the proper response, it could be too late. We're not going in guns blazing. We're just going to take a closer look." As the ship's engines roared to life and the Horizon changed course, Reed wondered if he was making a terrible mistake. Humanity had only recently begun reaching for the stars in earnest. They were still newcomers to the galactic community, still learning the complex web of alliances and conflicts that define this region of space. What Reed couldn't know, was that his decision would change the course of the war, and with it, humanity's place in the galaxy. The Lethian had sent their plea into the darkness hoping for salvation. Instead, they were about to meet humans, the strange, resilient species from a world that tried to kill them daily. The Deathworlders were coming to the battlefield. The Horizon dropped out of hyperspace with a shudder. Through the main viewport, Captain Reeve and his crew beheld a system of 7 planets orbiting a bright yellow star. The third world, a blue-green jewel against the black, showed signs of advanced civilization, but also the unmistakable scars of war. "Scanner shows multiple debris fields in orbit," reported Officer Mira, her eyes fixed on her console. "And there's a battle happening right now in the northern hemisphere." Reed straightened in his chair. Any sign they've detected us? Negative, Captain. We're still at the system's edge. Reed nodded grimly. Good. Maintain distance and passive scanning only. I want to understand what we're dealing with before making ourselves known. For 2 hours, the crew of the Horizon observed and recorded. The attacking forces, presumably the Vorn, employed sleek, angular ships that moved with precision. Their targets seemed to be population centers rather than military installations, a fact that hardened Reed's resolve. Sir, Mira called suddenly. I'm detecting a small vessel approaching from the planet. It appears to be heading directly for us. Reed frowned. So much for staying hidden. Defensive screens up, but weapons remain offline. Open a channel when they're in range. The approaching ship was unlike the aggressive Vorn vessels. It glowed with a soft, blue-green light and moved gracefully despite obvious damage to its hull. As it came within communication range, the view screen activated without prompting. Elder Tor's face appeared, looking more haggard than in the recorded message. You came, the alien said simply, wonder in its large eyes. You actually came. Reed stepped forward. I'm Captain Alex Reed of the Earth vessel Horizon. We received your distress call. Earth, Tor repeated, as if tasting the word. We know nothing of your world or people, yet you've traveled far to answer strangers. You honor us, Captain. We haven't committed to anything yet, Reed replied cautiously. We came to understand your situation first. Tor's gill-like structures fluttered, perhaps their equivalent of a sigh. Of course. May we meet in person? Our ship can dock with yours, if permitted. Reed hesitated only briefly. Granted. We'll prepare a reception. In the Horizon's conference room, Reed studied the 3 Luthian delegates with poorly concealed fascination. Up close, they were even more striking, tall and willowy, moving with a fluid grace that suggested their ancestors might have been aquatic. Elder Tor was accompanied by 2 younger Luthian, who were introduced as scientists. The Vorn attacked without warning 6 months ago, Tor explained, projecting images of the conflict. They demand our complete surrender and integration into their empire. Those who resist are eliminated. What resources do they want? Asked Lieutenant Fisher. Land. Minerals. The Luthian exchanged puzzled glances. You misunderstand, said one of the scientists, named Rill. The Vorn conquer because it is their nature. They believe that strength gives them the right to rule. Our peaceful ways and our art they see as weakness to be corrected or erased. Reed frowned. And you have no defensive capabilities. Minor ones only, Tor admitted. We never needed them before. As the meeting continued, Reed noticed the Luthian studying the humans with increasing intensity. Finally, Rill approached him with a strange device. With permission, Captain, I would like to measure something. Reed nodded, and Rill waved the device over him. Remarkable, the alien murmured. Your bone density, muscle mass, cardiovascular system, and you say Earth has higher gravity than standard. About 15% higher than galactic average, Reed confirmed. Why? The 3 Luthian looked at each other with new hope in their eyes. Captain, Tor said slowly, your species evolved on what we would classify as a death world. High gravity, extreme weather variations, dangerous predators. Such environments create resilient life forms. I suppose that's true, Reed said cautiously. The Vorn come from a world of perfect conditions, minimal gravity, controlled climate, no predators. Tor leaned forward. They've never encountered a species like yours before. Reed began to understand. You're saying humans might have physical advantages. More than you realize, Rill added excitedly. Your endurance alone would seem supernatural to the Vorn. For the first time since arriving, Reed felt a smile tugging at his lips. He activated his communicator. Officer Mira, send our full report to Earth Command. And add a personal note. I believe we found some new friends who could use our unique talents. The message from Earth Command arrived 18 hours after Reed's report. The captain read it alone in his quarters, his face illuminated by the blue glow of his tablet. The words were exactly what he expected. Caution, concerns about intervention, requests for more information. But beneath the diplomatic language lay tacit approval to continue his mission. Maintain observation and limited contact. The message concluded. A diplomatic team is being assembled. The Horizon is authorized to provide humanitarian assistance only until their arrival. Under no circumstances engage Vorn forces directly. Reed set down the tablet with a sigh. It was something. At least. Outside the viewport of his quarters, the blue-green planet Luthia rotated slowly. In the 3 days since their arrival, the crew had learned much about their new allies. The Lithian civilization was over 2,000 years old, peaceful, and technologically sophisticated in areas like medicine and environmental science. But their weapons were primitive, and their tactics non-existent. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. "Captain," Mira's voice came through the intercom. "The Vorn have begun another orbital bombardment of the southern continent. Elder Tor is requesting to speak with you urgently." Reed hurried to the bridge, where the main screen showed Tor's face, the background filled with frantic activity. "Captain Reed, the Vorn commander has requested parley," Tor said without preamble. "They've detected your vessel and demand to know your intentions in this conflict." Reed felt a chill run down his spine. "They want to talk to us directly." "Yes, they've established a neutral meeting point on our moon base." "This is unusual. The Vorn rarely negotiate. They're curious about us," Reed mused. "This could buy time for your people and for Earth to send reinforcements." He straightened his uniform. "Tell them I accept." The moon base was a marvel of Luthian architecture, crystalline domes, and graceful arches that somehow remained functional despite battle damage. Reed brought only 2 crew members with him, Lieutenant Fisher and Dr. Patel, the ship's medical officer. The Vorn delegation waited in a large chamber. Reed's first thought was that they looked like insects, but that wasn't quite right. Their bodies were encased in exoskeletons of mottled green and black, with 4 arms and 2 legs. Their heads featured compound eyes and mandibles that clicked softly as they spoke. "I am Commander Rock of the Vorn Empire," announced the largest of them. His voice, translated through a device on his chest, sounded metallic and cold. "You are not Luthian. Identify yourselves." Reed stepped forward. "Captain Alex Reed of the Earth vessel Horizon. We are here at the invitation of the Luthian people." The mandibles clicked rapidly, perhaps their version of laughter. "Earth. Unknown world. Irrelevant world. This conflict does not concern you. When one civilization attempts to eradicate another, it concerns all peaceful species," Reed replied evenly. Rock's compound eyes seemed to study Reed intently. "The Luthian are weak. Weakness must be culled. This is the natural order." Dr. Patel stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming protocol. "May I ask what makes you determine them as weak?" "They create art instead of weapons. They heal instead of conquer. They negotiate instead of fight." Rock's mandibles clicked again. "And their bodies are frail. Low muscle density. Minimal endurance. Poor adaptation capabilities." Reed exchanged glances with his crew members. The Vorn were judging strength purely on physical terms. "And what of humanity?" Reed asked carefully. "How do you measure us?" Commander Rock approached Reed, towering over him by at least a foot. "Your ship is small. Your technology unremarkable. You come from a backwater system with no significant allies." The Vorn leaned closer. "But there is something different about your physiology. Our scanners detect abnormalities." Reed smiled thinly. "Not abnormalities. Adaptations. Earth is not a gentle world, Commander." "It matters not," Rock declared, stepping back. "This meeting was to satisfy curiosity only. You have 7 planetary rotations to leave this system. After that, your vessel will be considered an enemy target." As the Vorn delegation departed, Fisher leaned toward Reed. 7 days. That's barely enough time for Earth's diplomatic team to arrive. Exactly what they intend, Reed said grimly. But they've made a critical error. What's that, sir? Reed watched the Vorn's retreating forms. They've underestimated us based on appearances, a mistake humans learned to stop making centuries ago. He tapped his communicator. Horizon, this is Reed. Patch me through to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Tell them we need more than diplomats. We need soldiers. And tell them to hurry. The 6 days following the meeting with Commander Rock passed in a blur of activity. Reed and his crew worked tirelessly alongside the Luthian, evacuating civilians from vulnerable coastal cities and establishing secure communication networks. The Vorn maintained their orbital position, launching only sporadic attacks, as if they were merely passing the time until their ultimatum expired. On the morning of the 7th day, the Horizon's sensors detected a ripple in space at the edge of the system. "Captain to the bridge," called Officer Mira over the intercom, excitement evident in her voice. Reed arrived to find his crew gathered around the main viewport. In the distance, a swirling blue vortex had formed, a hyperspace window, much larger than the one the Horizon had used to enter the system. "Earth responded," Fisher said, grinning. "And they didn't send just diplomats." From the vortex emerged a vessel that dwarfed the Horizon. The UES Defender was a military cruiser, its dark hull bristling with defense systems and weapon emplacements. Behind it came 2 smaller but equally imposing escort ships. "Incoming transmission from the Defender, sir," reported Fisher. The view screen activated to show a stern-faced woman with steel-gray hair and the insignia of an admiral on her uniform. "Captain Reed," she said briskly. "Admiral Kate Stone, Earth Defense Command. I see you found yourself in quite the situation." Reed stood at attention. "Yes, Admiral. Thank you for responding so quickly." Stone's expression remained serious, but her eyes held a glint of approval. Earth Command sees both humanitarian and strategic importance in this conflict. The Luthian reached out for help, and humanity answers. She paused. "I've read your reports on the Vorn. Time to see if they're as tough as they think they are." Admiral Stone wasted no time establishing a command center in the Luthian capital. Reed watched with admiration as she coordinated the unloading of equipment and personnel. The human contingent numbered only 200, but they moved with purpose and discipline that visibly impressed the Luthian observers. "They're specialists," Stone explained to Reed and Elder Tor as they walked through the bustling operation. "Veterans from Earth's harshest environments. Desert warfare experts from the Sahara. Arctic combat specialists from Antarctica. Jungle fighters from the Amazon. Each one has survived conditions that would kill most sentient species." Tor's gill structures fluttered with emotion. "So few against the Vorn thousands." Stone smiled grimly. "Quality over quantity, Elder. Besides, we're not here to match them ship for ship or soldier for soldier. We're here to show them why picking fights with unknown species is a bad idea." A sudden commotion drew their attention. A group of soldiers had set up a training area and were demonstrating hand-to-hand combat techniques to fascinated Luthian observers. 2 humans sparred with controlled intensity, their movements quick and powerful. "Your people seem to enjoy combat," Tor observed, sounding troubled. "Not enjoy," Reed corrected gently. "Respect. On Earth, fighting is sometimes necessary for survival." "The Vorn are calling," interrupted a young lieutenant, approaching with a tablet. "They're demanding to speak with whoever's in charge of the new arrivals." Stone took the tablet. "Perfect timing. Patch them through." Commander Rock's insectoid face appeared on screen, mandibles clicking rapidly in what Reed now recognized as agitation. "You violate our ultimatum." Rock hissed. "These reinforcements change nothing." Stone stepped forward. "Admiral Kate Stone of Earth Defense Command. We're not reinforcements, Commander. We're the response to your threat against a peaceful species. Your primitive weapons can't." Stone cut him off. "Let's test that theory. I propose a single engagement. One of your squads against one of mine. Neutral ground. No ships, no heavy weapons. Just soldiers. Her smile was predatory. Unless you're afraid to face Deathworlders directly. Rock's compound eyes seemed to narrow. Deathworlders. That's what you called us, isn't it? The species from a planet that should have killed us, but made us stronger instead. The Vorn commander was silent for several seconds. Finally, his mandibles clicked once. Tomorrow, the Western Plateau. 10 warriors each. The transmission ended abruptly. Admiral, Reed said carefully, "Are you sure about this?" Stone's expression was confident. "Captain, the Vorn need to learn what humans are capable of. Tomorrow will be their first lesson. And if they don't like what they learn," asked Tor anxiously, "then they'll receive a much harsher education." Stone replied, watching her soldiers continue their drills with cold determination. Dawn broke over the Western Plateau in a wash of amber and gold. The flat, rocky terrain stretched for miles, dotted with boulders and low scrub, perfect for the demonstration Admiral Stone had planned. A small group of Luthian observers huddled nervously behind a security perimeter, their tall forms shifting anxiously as they watched the humans prepare. Captain Reed stood beside Elder Tor as Stone's chosen squad performed their final equipment checks. The 10 soldiers represented Earth's diversity, men and women from different continents, backgrounds, and military specialties. What united them was a quiet confidence that Reed found reassuring. "They seem so small compared to the Vorn," Tor whispered. Reed nodded. "Size isn't everything in combat." A low rumble announced the arrival of the Vorn transport. The massive vehicle settled on the plateau's edge, and 10 warriors emerged. Each stood over 7 feet tall, their exoskeletons gleaming in the morning light. They carried weapons that looked like a cross between spears and rifles. Commander Rock approached the human line, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "These are your champions," he asked, surveying the humans with obvious disdain. "They are even smaller than I expected." Admiral Stone stepped forward. The terms were clear. 10 minutes of engagement. No fatalities. The winner demonstrates their combat superiority. Rock made a sound like grinding metal. A Vorn laugh. "Agreed. Though I fail to see how this exercise serves any purpose except to humble your species." "Then you have nothing to worry about," Stone replied calmly. She turned to her squad. "Remember your training. Demonstrate, don't devastate." The soldiers nodded and spread out across the terrain. The Vorn warriors did the same, moving with mechanical precision. A signal flare shot into the sky, and the engagement began. The Vorn attacked immediately, charging forward with their superior reach and strength. But the humans moved in ways the aliens clearly hadn't anticipated, ducking, rolling, using the terrain to their advantage. Where the Vorn expected direct confrontation, the humans delivered hit-and-run tactics. "What are they doing?" asked a confused Lithian scientist. "Guerrilla warfare," Reed explained. "An Earth tactic as old as time." The Vorn quickly grew frustrated. Their movements became less coordinated as they tried to pin down opponents who refused to engage on expected terms. A human soldier would appear from behind a boulder, strike quickly, then vanish before the Vorn could respond. 5 minutes in, the pattern of the engagement became clear. The Vorn were stronger and had better reach, but the humans were faster, more agile, and most surprisingly to the observers, seemed totally unfazed by exertion. "The Vorn are slowing down," Tor noted with wonder. "They're tiring." Reed nodded. "Endurance. It's what Admiral Stone was counting on." By the 7-minute mark, the humans began pressing their advantage. Working in pairs, they systematically isolated and disabled Vorn warriors. Not with brute force, but with precise strikes to joints and sensory organs. The Vorn's superior strength meant nothing when they couldn't catch their opponents or coordinate their attacks. When the final signal flare marked the end of the engagement, 8 of the 10 Vorn warriors were incapacitated. The humans stood victorious, sweating, but barely winded. Commander Rock's compound eyes fixed on Admiral Stone with a new emotion, one Reed recognized as genuine shock. "This proves nothing," Rock insisted, though his mandibles clicked nervously. "Real battle is not a staged exhibition." "You're right," Stone agreed. "In real battle, we wouldn't hold back." She gestured to her squad. "These soldiers came from a world where survival has never been guaranteed. Every human is born a fighter because our planet demanded it." Rock retreated without another word, his defeated warriors limping back to their transport. As the Vorn departed, Elder Tor approached Admiral Stone. "That was educational, but will it change anything?" Stone watched the Vorn transport disappear over the horizon. "It already has. They expected weaklings and found warriors. Now they'll recalculate, adapt their strategy." "And then?" Reed asked. "Then we show them what humans really do best," Stone replied, her eyes hardening. "We innovate, we surprise, and when necessary, we fight with everything we have." She turned to face the assembled Luthian. "The real battle begins now. It's time to teach your people how to defend themselves, Deathworlder style." 3 weeks after the plateau demonstration, the war had transformed into something the Vorn clearly didn't understand. Their methodical conquest had stalled, then reversed. The once defenseless Luthian, guided by human advisors, had become elusive targets. When the Vorn attacked a city, they found it evacuated. When they secured a resource point, sabotage rendered it worthless. In the makeshift war room beneath the Luthian capital, Admiral Stone studied the holographic map with Captain Reed and Elder Tor. Red markers showed Vorn positions, while blue indicated Allied forces. "They're consolidating," Stone observed, "pulling back to defensible positions." Reed nodded. "They've lost 12% of their ground forces and 5 ships without achieving any significant victories. That has to hurt their pride." "Pride is dangerous," Tor cautioned, his gill structures pulsing with anxiety. "Our intelligence suggests the Vorn Supreme Commander has arrived in the system." Stone's eyes narrowed. "Draz. The reports describe him as ruthless, even by Vorn standards." "He's called an emergency council," Tor confirmed. "Our sources say he's furious with Commander Rock's failure to contain what began as a simple conquest." A young human lieutenant rushed into the room, her face flushed with urgency. "Admiral, multiple Vorn dropships descending toward the northern continent. It's a massive deployment, far larger than anything we've seen before." Stone straightened, instantly alert. "They're making their move." She activated the communication system. "All units to battle stations. This is not a drill." From the observation post on Mount Kirill, Reed watched the Vorn invasion force through high-powered binoculars. Thousands of warriors marched across the valley below, supported by armored vehicles and air units. "They're going all in," he muttered to Lieutenant Fisher beside him. Fisher nodded grimly. "They must think they can overwhelm us with sheer numbers." Reed's communicator crackled. "Captain, this is Stone. Are you in position?" "Affirmative. Admiral, the Vorn army is advancing exactly as predicted. They'll reach the river basin in approximately 20 minutes." "Perfect. Operation Thunderstorm is greenlit. Get your people to high ground." Reed signaled to the human Luthian joint forces hidden throughout the mountain range. "You heard the Admiral. Move to evacuation points. Now." As his troops retreated up the mountainside, Reed took one last look at the valley. The Vorn force was impressive, perhaps 30,000 strong, moving with mechanical precision toward what they believed was the location of the main Luthian resistance. What they didn't know was that humans had spent weeks studying Luthia's weather patterns and geological features. The narrow valley, with its steep walls and single river, was a natural disaster waiting to happen. Reed reached the bunker just as the first engineered lightning strikes hit the mountain peaks. The Luthian weather control technology, repurposed from agricultural use to warfare, performed flawlessly. Dark clouds formed with unnatural speed, dumping torrential rain onto the mountaintops. How long? Fisher asked anxiously. Reed checked his watch. 3 minutes until the ground is saturated. Another 2 until the dams break. Through the bunker's viewports, they watched as confusion spread through the Vorn ranks. Their commanders could be seen pointing at the rapidly darkening sky, clearly baffled by the sudden storm in what had been clear weather. The first mudslide caught the Vorn rear guard, sweeping armored vehicles away like toys. Then the river burst its banks, swollen by rainwater, and the carefully timed release of 3 upstream reservoirs. The valley didn't just flood. It transformed into a raging torrent of mud, rock, and water that the Vorn had no defense against. Their exoskeletons, evolved for a world without natural disasters, offered no protection against nature's fury. When the storm subsided an hour later, the Vorn army was in ruins. Survivors struggled through mud, their perfect formation shattered, their communication systems disrupted. Admiral Stone's voice came through on all channels, calm and satisfied. Captain Reed, begin Phase 2. Let's show the Vorn what happens when they pick a fight with people who grew up surviving floods, earthquakes, and hurricanes. Reed signaled his forces forward. The battle wasn't over, but the tide had definitively turned. The Deathworlders had brought Earth's most powerful weapon to bear. The understanding that nature itself could be the greatest ally, or the deadliest enemy. Supreme Commander Draz was about to learn a painful lesson about underestimating humans. Supreme Commander Draz stood motionless before the view screen, his compound eyes fixed on the devastation below. The once proud Vorn invasion force lay scattered across the valley, broken and defeated. His mandibles clicked slowly, a sound his subordinates recognized as controlled rage. Impossible, he hissed. 30,000 warriors. Our finest battalions. Commander Rock stood at attention nearby, his posture submissive. The humans used the planet itself as a weapon. Supreme Commander. They predicted the storm patterns and... Silence. Draz's upper limbs snapped in irritation. You said they were primitives. Barely worth our notice. Now they have crippled our invasion force using... weather. A communication officer approached cautiously. Supreme Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel. Draz's exoskeleton shifted colors slightly, a sign of intense emotional control among the Vorn. Display it. Admiral Stone's face appeared on screen, her expression neither triumphant nor hostile, but coolly professional. Supreme Commander Draz, she began, I am Admiral Kate Stone of Earth Defense Command. I offer you a chance to end this conflict. Draz's mandibles clicked rapidly. You offer us nothing. The Vorn Empire does not surrender. I'm not asking for surrender, Stone replied calmly. I'm proposing a cessation of hostilities and the beginning of diplomatic relations between the Vorn Empire, the Lithian Confederation, and Earth. The command center fell silent as Draz considered this unexpected development. Why would we negotiate when we could simply bring our full fleet to bear? He finally asked. Stone's expression didn't change, because it would cost you more than you're willing to pay, Commander. The battle today demonstrated that humans understand something the Vorn have forgotten. Adaptability is the true measure of strength. On the neutral ground of the Luthian moon base, 3 delegations gathered in the Grand Chamber. Admiral Stone led the human contingent, with Captain Reed and Lieutenant Fisher at her side. Elder Tor headed the Luthian representatives, while Supreme Commander Draz personally represented Vorn interests. The negotiations had lasted 3 days. Now, as they prepared to sign the treaty, Reed studied the Vorn leader with curiosity. Draz was physically imposing even for his species, his exoskeleton bearing elaborate markings that signified his high rank. Before we formalize this agreement, Draz said suddenly, I must understand something. You defeated our forces, yet you seek peace rather than victory. Why? Admiral Stone met his compound gaze steadily. Humans learned long ago that true strength isn't measured by conquest. On Earth, the strongest societies are those that build rather than destroy. Yet you fight with remarkable skill for a species that claims to value peace. Draz observed. Reed spoke up. We fight when necessary, Commander, but we prefer to make allies rather than subjects. Draz's mandibles clicked softly as he processed this. The Vorn have always believed that the strong must rule the weak. It is the natural order. Perhaps, Elder Tor suggested gently, there are different kinds of strength. The Luthian create art and medicine. Humans adapt and innovate. The Vorn build and organize. Each is powerful in its own way. A long silence followed as Draz considered these words. Finally, he made a gesture that his aides clearly found shocking. He lowered his upper limbs in a posture of respect. The Vorn Empire agrees to these terms, he announced. The Luthian will retain their independence. Humans will be recognized as a sovereign power in this sector. And we, he paused, mandibles clicking thoughtfully, we will learn what these other forms of strength might offer. As the three leaders pressed their identifiers to the treaty, Reed felt a weight lift from his shoulders. What had begun with a desperate SOS had ended not in conquest or extermination, but with understanding. Later, as the human delegation prepared to return to their ships, Elder Tor approached Reed privately. When we sent our message into the void, the Lithian said softly, we hoped for saviors. Instead, we found something better, teachers. Reed smiled. And we found new perspectives. That's what exploration is really about. From the viewport, they watched as the Vorn flagship moved into a higher orbit, no longer a threat but a potential partner. The Deathworlders had come to the battlefield, but rather than bringing only destruction, they had created something far more valuable, the beginning of peace. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, other species were about to learn an important lesson. Never underestimate those who evolved on worlds that tried to kill them every day, not just for their strength in battle, but for their capacity to forge paths where others see only walls.